The first item on our agenda, we are so happy to have with us our Chief of Police and members of the Henrico County Police Department here. And so we're going to receive an update on the collaboration and training between school resource officers and the Henrico Police Department discussion. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. You certainly summarized that item well. So pleased to have Chief English and key members of his team with us today. Pleased to have an opportunity to share with the board and our constituents our plans, our SRO plans for the upcoming year, including training efforts and so much more, and even a look back on where we've been and an idea of where we're headed as we continue this strong collaboration with our Henrico Police partners. Mr. Pritchard, I'll let you kick it off.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Cashwell. Before we begin our presentation, we would like to share a brief video that will help highlight our relationship with Henrico County Police.
I can think of so many positive aspects to the relationship we have with the Henrico Police Department, specifically the SRO program. And I think one of the most important aspects or benefits of that is around campus safety. There are no better experts on safety and security of our campuses than our police counterpart. And so I think the expertise that they bring as we manage campus safety is so important.
Well, the primary function of our school resource officers is just to provide a safe working environment for our teachers and administrators and a safe learning environment for our students. We want our kids that know us more than just law enforcement. We try to get to know them personally. We also want them to know a lot more about us outside of just the normal duties that we have on a regular basis. So when you do see me out in the community, you know who I am, and you know that I'm just much more than just that person that wears a uniform.
You know, you might often see that they're out greeting students in the bus loop. They're in the lunchroom having conversations with students, getting to know their interests, their concerns related to the campus. So they really are working to forge relationships. I've been in schools where the SRO can call almost every student's name as they're coming down the hallway, and it's such a positive thing to see.
Good morning, morning. So this is Rico. He's a 6-year-old Dutch Shepherd.
Well, a lot of times, kids get excited about what they see on TV, and they get excited about the tools that we use within the division. And there are many times when we will go to the school and do a demonstration. We allow the kids to see the tools that we use. And I think it's important for them to get to know why we do some of the things that we do, just as any citizen should know about the tools that we use within our division. And so there are times when our SROs will go there, they'll let them see the lights in the car, the bomb robot, let them see what the robot does, things of that nature. A lot of students are interested in what law enforcement is all about. And so when you talk about activities outside of the norm, yesterday we did a kickball game with the kids at Johnson Elementary School. And you should just see the joy on the kids and the interaction that we had with those children. It just means so much more than what the everyday person would see in schools. And so when you talk about those type of activities, you talk about the interactions that Officer Scholl has at Holland Springs with the lacrosse team.
Beautiful job, baby. Beautiful job.
There are just so many positive interactions that take place and can really early on not only set a positive culture and tone in the building, but help form early relationships about how community policing works.
We want our kids to know us more than just law enforcement. And so us learning from them learning from us, that's a huge partnership for us, and it goes a long way.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Good morning.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to highlight the positive relationships in our schools and communities, and hope that this was evident in the video you just watched. We are pleased to have the Chief of Police with us today, which just goes to show the important relationship between the two divisions. Today, we are going to review some of the information that was highlighted in the video to include collaboration and engagement between schools and our SROs, a review of the training provided to SROs and school administration this summer in preparation for the 21-22 school year. We will also discuss key areas of focus for our SRO engagement. Here is Major Alvis, who is going to talk to you about the engagement opportunities this past year.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing us to be here today. Although this year provided us with many obstacles, it also provided us with many opportunities to expand our engagement activities with our students. Before the school year began, we provided support at the meal distribution sites, and then once September came with the virtual start, that expanded to include support for the bus meal delivery services. SROs were on site at meal distribution locations to greet families and assist with handing out meals, and some went so far as to support our bus drivers when supplies ran low during the bus delivery. For instance, Officer Owens, the SRO at Hermitage and ACE Center, was present at the bus stop in London Town when the bus ran out of milk. The cafeteria manager was contacted, and Officer Owens drove back to the school to pick up milk and deliver it for the students and families at the next stop. Just like our students and staff had to adjust to the virtual learning, so did our SROs. They offered virtual office hours, which provided a way to contribute and stay connected with students and staffs at the school, for them to exchange ideas and to serve as a platform for parents to communicate with the SROs. Schools' resource officers created new and updated criminal justice and first responder classes. Existing clubs converted to a virtual status for 2021 school year. The Chief Student Advisory Board, which was also virtual for this school year, the Chief Student Advisory Board provides the opportunity for high school students, 2 per school, to engage with the Chief of Police about various topics to include, but not limited to, current events. One other example of direct interaction was SRO Danilovich. He challenged one of his students at Brooklyn Middle School that if she brought up her grades, he would purchase ice cream for her. The student brought up her grades with the help of HCPS staff as well as him on tutoring, and she made the honor roll. With permission from the principal, the school's guardian, Danilovich purchased Blizzard ice cream for the student in April. Stories like this happen daily between students and SROs. SROs engage in multiple ways. For example, SROs were guest speakers in government and AP government classes instructing on probable cause and search and seizure. SROs joined virtual career days and participated in community helper lessons virtually. Like many events this past school year, the Fraternity Order of Police Cops and Kids program had to be modified due to COVID-19. The FOP requested SROs to help deliver gift cards to students selected for the holiday program. Cops and Kids programs would not have been successful without the collaboration between HCPS, SROs, and the FOP. An anonymous community member contacted Henrico Police asking for assistance in distributing donating turkeys and fixings for nearly 30 families for a meal during Thanksgiving holiday. SROs collaborated with school officials to identify students and families for this outstanding gesture of generosity by a Henrico family. This was in addition to the HPAL turkey meal giveaway turnout and support in that great program. In this picture is also featured Officer Medina, who was engaging with students during lunch, and Officer Scholl preparing to speak with students on the bus ramp. Again, examples of daily engagement.
The most current memorandum of understanding between HCPS and the HPD has been posted to the Henrico County Public School website and is reviewed annually by all parties involved. All school administrators and school resource officers will receive a copy of the most recent MOU and an overview of the updates made to ensure that there is a clear understanding of each other's role and expectations during the joint training that occurred on August 18th. Training for the upcoming school year begins with the Joint School Administrator School Resource Officer Training. This training occurs during the Juvenile Service Officer School and includes all HCPS school principals, their administration staff, and any additional staff members principals would like to attend from their school along with the school resource officers. It is a collaboration day-long training, which is also open to all department directors and their staff. This training will include an update of the most recent changes to the MOU, review of mandated reporting and certain acts and legislation recorded disorderly conduct, enhancements to school safety, protocols, and procedures, and tabletop exercises that will seek participants to utilize a global perspective to provide a multi-lens approach to resolution and long-term effects of the school and community. Major Alvis will now talk you through the Juvenile Service Officer School that is developed by the Police Division and required for all police officers serving as an SRO.
As Lenny shared, the Juvenile Service Officer School was developed by the Henrico County Police Division. It started in 2015 and is an annual certification required for all SROs, in addition to the required initial training provided by the Department of Criminal Justice Services. The Juvenile Service Officer School is a 40-hour week-long class which focuses on providing training to officers on how to best handle youth-oriented issues. On July 1st, 2020, the General Assembly passed new law requiring agencies to provide a minimum training for certification and reclassification of officers serving as school resource officers. Previously, this was not the case. However, Henrico has been doing this for years. Trainings include awareness of cultural diversity and implicit bias, conflict resolution to include de-escalation techniques, working with students with disabilities, mental health needs, substance abuse disorders, or post-traumatic experiences, student behavioral dynamics, including current child and adolescent development and brain research, state and federal laws, school and personal liability issues, security awareness in school environment, and disaster and emergency response. Many of the presenters of the Juvenile Services Officer School are HCPS employees, to include Dr. Monica Manns, Director for Equity, Diversity, and Opportunity, who provided training on equality and opportunity. Christina Vitek, Director of School Psychological Services, who presented on the adolescent brain and student mental health. Dr. Katie Smith, Director of Exceptional Education, presented on students with disabilities. Ms. Courtney Berry presented on school safety procedures and protocols, and a variety of staff, to include Dr. Noel, who ran us through situations on discipline. Student support and wellness and other members of school safety office were present as well and working on relationship building. We will have a heavy focus on student engagement opportunities coming this year. We are looking to expand participation in current law enforcement and public safety clubs. We've asked SROs to focus and work with counselors and administration on relationship building, and to increase opportunities for teaching and mentoring moments between police and students, including collaboration on projects for our students at the ACE centers. We're looking to revamp the Chief Student Advisory Board to ensure students have a larger platform to determine their decisions and what they want to hear on topics of discussion, focusing on areas of their concerns. Lenny and I appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. Our respective staffs stay in contact with each other throughout the school year, many times speaking daily on the academic year and on areas of concern. Chief English and Lieutenant Colonel Tony are here as well, and we are all available for any questions that you may have. Thank you for allowing this presentation today.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you both. I know that we have probably a lot of questions and points of clarity, so I'm going to begin with my right with Ms. Kinsella.
Well, actually, you're not going to get that many questions from me. You're just going to get a big thank you. And thank you, Chief English, and thank you, Dr. Cashwell, for continuing for working together and revising the MOU and taking into account all of the feedback that we received, concerns from parents and students and community members. I'm real grateful for that, and just nice to see safety first. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsella. Mrs. Shea.
Thank you. I'll echo Ms. Kinsella's thanks to Chief English and Dr. Cashwell for working together on many iterations of the MOU, taking into account community feedback as we work to kind of refine our partnership to be the best it can for our students and community. And so I guess my only question is, when we post the new MOU, will there be some sort of highlight as to what the changes are for this one?
I'm not sure if the website has I mean, I think previous histories have been shown so you could see the differences, but I don't know that it's highlighted specifically where the changes were made. We can certainly provide a summary statement, maybe annually, and recognizing, you know, while we commit to reviewing our MOU annually, it can be revised at any time as we would need to. And I think that's one of the highlights of our outstanding collaboration is if we were to see an area we would need to adjust outside of that annual review period, we certainly would do so. And we can provide summary along with the posted document.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shea. Ms. Ogburn.
Absolutely. The key word I heard in what you were talking about is collaboration. You said it a number of times, and I think that is just the key to what we're doing, and the collaboration between the SROs, the departments, the staff, all the way around is the key to making all of this work and continue to work. So I'll echo what my colleagues have said. I just think the support of our kids and our staff is so important and so appreciated, and having that good relationship with a police officer is key to that going outside of school, which I think is so important. But I do appreciate the update and the training and responding to community feedback, any concerns that people have. That relationship building and collaboration is just, I think, so important. So I thank you for what you do every day to support our kids and staff, and look forward to that continuing for a good long time. But thank you.
And not to interrupt, Mr. Chairman, and just, you know, thinking about Mrs. Shea's comment a second ago, I wanted to also kind of address where some of the larger changes were. While we'll post those, I think this will be a good opportunity to share. And I think what you've seen over time in the refinement of the MOU is really delineating the role of the school resource officer versus the school administrator, and really being clear that discipline matters are that of the school staff. And the school resource officer role is all of the things you saw highlighted here today. So I think the bulk of the changes you'll see over time in the MOU, not just from this last iteration, but prior iterations, are really working to refine that. And, you know, as was shared, that document was just shared at the annual training with the administrators and resource officers to really be clear about what that looks like and those roles and responsibilities, and making sure the language that we're using is clear not only to our building administrators, but also to our public. And I think that's what we heard a lot of in our public feedback, was really being able to fine tune that language so that it's understandable to all of our stakeholders.
Thank you, Dr. Cashwell. Ms. Atkins?
Thank you. Thank you again. Communication is key, along with the collaboration. I think that in discussions, particularly in thinking about your school resource officers, the administration, and what does discipline really mean, and who's the individual that determines the discipline, and you know, what are the severity levels and who gets to enforce the severity levels. I think a big part of that is in communication, not just with the families, but explaining to the students what these things are, what they mean when it comes from an SRO. So I'm very appreciative of that. I also, in the category of communication, I just want to share with the public where the MOU is, because as you were speaking and sharing that it was on the main page, I also want to be very clear on where on the main page, because I know we're going to have folks, since that was said, looking for it. So to be clear, once you go to HCPS main page, what you'll do is scroll to the bottom. You'll see a section that says required notifications, because it may not be apparent exactly where this is. So when you see required notifications, you'll click on that. You'll scroll down, keep scrolling, and once you get to a place, you'll see, and I want to click on it so that I can make sure that I say it accurately. All right, so what you'll see, it's stated as Henrico School Law Enforcement MOU. And so that's where I have located the MOU, as Dr. Cashwell has shared. It will continuously be revised and updated, but I want to make sure, and Dr. Cashwell, please let me know if that's not the accurate place to look for it. But I do think when we're talking about contracts and memorandum of understanding and making sure that folks understand the verbiage, well, the first step is knowing where it is. And so just for those out there that have been asking, that's where you can locate it. And of course, if you have questions, there's individuals that can answer those questions for you. The other question that I do have is, how often are the training sessions?
So we train annually with HCPS at that JSO school. Every single school resource officer, before they can go into the schools, our requirement is that they go through DCJS training to be a school resource officer. So there's training that's done, and then there is that JSO school. And then we also have trainings, what we call briefings, where we bring people, police officers in, and we'll train them on up-to-date issues and things like that if there's anything that needs to be addressed.
Great. You actually answered my second question, which was going to be, I knew about the annual training, but as you receive feedback, are there other trainings that take place that address the feedback that you see? Because of course there's peaks and valleys, and as we peak in certain areas, there are trainings available to address those, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then the other question is specifically around using tasers. Was that addressed in your training, using tasers in school?
We do. We go through de-escalation tactics, and that's part of that training. And that would be near to the last resort, which we want to do is, using tasers or anything that's less than lethal weapons in order to control a situation. So we do try and de-escalate situations prior to having to go to those resources. But unfortunately, sometimes that does occur.
I think specifically, was there any discussion around mental wellness, not only in the use of the taser, but for those that watch someone being tased? Was there any training around any potential trauma or anything like that as far as well-being? Is there discussions on that in the training?
Yes, ma'am. We talked about well-being, and that's one of the initiatives that we'd like to see SROs do. We know that there are more counselors coming into school, and like you said, collaboration and communication. My goal is to see SROs collaborating and communicating with those counselors so that if they have a student that is undergoing any trauma, we can help address that.
Can you share with me a little bit more about that process between the SRO and the counselor?
So as it's developing, we're going to have those communications. SROs are available to all staff and to all school staff. And if a counselor would come to an SRO and say, we're experiencing somebody with a trauma and would like to speak to a police officer, we'd be more than happy to do that.
Okay, so that's really on a case-by-case basis?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct? Okay. All right, thank you so much. Those are all the questions that I have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Atkins. So just to refresh my memory, could you tell me how many SROs are at each school? First question. And what factors are considered in determining the number of SROs needed at each school?
So we have a variety of SROs. Some have two, some have one. And the schools that we have two SROs, and then when determining what SROs go where, it's based on calls for service and administrative needs for that school. So in some of those, in every high school we have one, in every middle school we have one. In elementary schools, the middle school SROs will then cover the elementary schools. And they'll be responsible for going out there and making contact with those administrators and principals to make sure that they have contact information and can call if needed, and they'll respond. Like I said, every high school has at least one. Some high schools have two, and those with two are determined based on those calls for service and administrative needs.
I appreciate it. I think that's very important because there's always questions in regards to why certain schools have more or less than others in regards to that. So thank you for that. On page 4 of the MOU, where the roles, responsibility of the school resource officer are discussed, page 4. I'm most interested in the SRO's role as law-related educator. With our police officers in our schools, where our primary goal is to educate students, I would like to make sure the emphasis is placed on this aspect of the SRO's role. We all know that for some of our students, there's a complicated relationship with law enforcement, or even some students honestly are fearful and distrustful of law enforcement. And our priorities should be focused on educating our students and working towards fostering positive relationships with our youth, which I know that you all have as a tenet. For our high schoolers, let me ask this question. Do we have any data on classes or workshops taught to them on law enforcement topics such as understanding their rights when stopped by law enforcement practices, or even changes in relevant laws, et cetera?
Dr. Cooper, I don't have any data on that. I can tell you that it does happen at most high schools. We are assisting with those classes with, society and government, as well as driver education programs where we discuss those issues and those interactions. I don't have any data on that at this time, but perhaps it's something that we could collect and get to you in the future.
Again, we talk about equity in regards to what are our students being taught and the efficacy of it. I mean, especially since, this relationship between police and community is a relationship that's going to be fostered for the rest of their lives. I think it's phenomenally foundational if we can make sure that, taking advantage of that role of the educator would be very important. On page 6 of the MOU, MOU under investigation and questioning, paragraph D4, it mentions that the principal will make a good faith effort to contact the student's parent prior to beginning of the interview. If the parent cannot be contacted, the principal or designee will sit in while the police division's member questions the student. My questions for this is, if a parent is unable to be contacted, could the student designate an adult such as a case manager or a counselor or coach or someone to be a third party within the building who may be a trusted person to sit on the interview as a witness? And my reasoning for that is having both authority figures of a principal and a law enforcement official may only heighten the anxiety of the student being questioned or interviewed.
That's a very good question, sir, and that's something that we'll have to address with legal counsel on as it relates to policy as well as the legislation updates. And that's perhaps something that we can look at. Yes, sir.
And I think that's an excellent question. I want to clarify that this piece of the MOU speaks to a law enforcement issue. So if a student is receiving questioning by a law enforcement issue related to something that's law enforcement, not student discipline. And so you might often see our administrators working with students to question them about a discipline matter, and absolutely counselors sitting in on that and others when a parent's not available. But as the officer said, when it comes to law enforcement rules and matters, that's certainly their purview. And I think one of the things we've tried to strengthen is making sure that we're doing our due diligence while children are in our care in our schools. If a law enforcement matter is happening in our schools and the police are involved, that we are working as school officials to make those connections with the parent or guardian. So we'll look forward to an update on, how we might better facilitate that process.
I appreciate that. I know that we are very concerned about ensuring that we de-escalate anxiety as well. Last question, on page 1, under paragraph 4A. Page 1, paragraph 4A, evaluation of the school law enforcement partnerships. It speaks of measurable objectives established by HCPS and HCPD, and the progress towards the objectives will be jointly reviewed at least annually. Can you speak to this data and advise on the objectives that were established and any progress made toward achieving them?
Definitely want to follow up after the meeting with some more details, but at a high level, I think I can speak to, one of the data points we actually presented last year has to do with the school safety survey that goes out by the VDOE. There are some specific questions directed at staff and students on whether or not they feel safer as a result of the SRO's presence in the building. We've had high response rates in relation to that item, and so we continue to track that. That's one of the metrics that we're looking towards. as we evaluate. And there are certainly some others, and I think, sort of like annual academic progress as it's measured with the SOLs hit a bump with the pandemic, we continue to work through, any other measures we can put in place. But I think that's certainly one on the school's end that we're very cognizant of and continue to watch. And I think, some that will be newly established are related to the chief student advisory. And I think while we can collect data from surveys and things like that, I think what the chief is hearing from our students specifically about the SRO program, anecdotally, their real experiences, their real feedback, and how we can use that to shape. I'll be interested in themes he produces from those meetings with our students as we continue to grow and set goals for the program. We'll be looking to incorporate some goals based on the feedback he receives directly from our students.
So I appreciate that. As we progress toward achieving the goals, will they be shared so persons can see the progress for transparency purposes? I mean, aligned with the MOU? Because I think too often, we talk about academic progress, right? We say it, but where is the actual data that supports, what we know it's happening? Because I mean, anecdotally is one thing, but showing it and sharing is another.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is an area where we've continued to grow in thinking about what measures we can use besides some of the quantitative. And so we're really interested in this piece with the student advisory. And I think that's certainly something we can build into something that we could continue to report out, not only through perhaps our school division strategic plan under that safety and wellness section. Some of those measures I think relate here, but specific to the MOU, absolutely. I look forward to sharing more specifics there.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. Chief English, Lieutenant Colonel Tony, so good to see you both. And again, appreciate the partnership and look forward to the continued evolution of the relationship to ensuring that our students and staff and families know the important and integral role that you all play in keeping our students safe as well as educating our students and our community. So thank you both. Madam Superintendent.
Yeah. Want to echo the thanks again, Chief English, your entire team. I won't spend too long on this because I know you're in a hurry to move on to some other obligations, but just can't thank you enough. Collaboration and partnership was the key of today, the key word you heard over and over again today. And some of you might remember when I was new to the county 3 years ago, in my passport reflections, I picked out some highlights that I saw as real strengths of Henrico County, and this was one of them. I had the unfortunate situation with a plane crash followed by tornadoes during dismissal. And what I saw coming to the county was an incredibly well-oiled machine with law enforcement, fire, EM, everybody working together in a manner that just really stood out to me as proof that, this partnership and collaboration is working well. We've continued to grow that in the years that I have been with Henrico County. And so just couldn't be prouder of the Henrico County partnership that we see here with this SRO program as we continue to grow and refine it responsive to feedback. So look forward to many great years to come of continued partnership. Thank you so much, Chief. And I think Mr. Jenks has a short commercial for us on the website.
Yes, I do, Dr. Cashwell. Mr. Chairman, if I may have a minute to follow up on what Mrs. Atkins said just a short moment ago. It is accurate that the information appears on the required notifications page of our website. Just yesterday, in preparation for this meeting, it has been placed on what we call the health and safety page of the website, which is a homepage location. And if you click on what we call the health and safety page, you'll see a section called Partnership with Henrico Police. The MOU exists at that link as well. And as we get into our typical messaging routines during the school year, there will be opportunities for us to push this out directly to our audiences as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jenks.
Thank you, Mr. Jenks.